More film history. She's a small town in the foot of the huge corporate and knees.
Working girl.
Working, very yes. Aaron Brockovich. So it's kind of similar, I guess. You have to blow the water.
Moby Dick.
Great guess, body as well. But no, this was not about that kind of blowing water. This was about Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. You have to blow the water. And this is not one you'll never guess, but it's one of my favorites. No bowel, glory. Her mother socks. That's the tagline for The Incredibles. The Pixar classic. I wanted to read a couple of poems quickly as I can read them, I guess, about children. When I was in high school, I worked in an after-school center for at-risk youth, and this is a poem. I wrote a poem about a pair of brothers, and I'm just going to read one of them tonight because I'm taking longer than I planned. This one is called The Child James. Always angry, he came to the center and could not keep his silence. The surrounding air boiled, adjacent objects flinched and bristled, pain to see such cruel knowledge, such wariness in one so young. Father vanished, mother addled ghost, prone to force and forgetting, too burdened by a private ache to nurse his or his brother's wounds. One day I found a crumpled Xeroxed sheet covered with math problems in his bag. What is 1 times 1? What do you have when you take 2 from nothing? I brushed the paper smooth, combed its creases, then called James. He would not take the offered chair, but climbed up on my legs and refused to be shaken loose. His ear craned to my lips. I whispered sequences of numbers, asked him to calculate. He would not answer. How was I to know what subtractions he had already performed? If our language had been different when we first met, I might have asked him, how many years do you have? And been met by wild, unknowing fear. What I really said was, how old are you? And he looked down, held up a tiny hand with all the fingers extended as though trying to stop whatever else was coming. What is 1 taken from 2? If you have 3 and divide by 2, what's left? How to divide? Do you know how to carry things over? James became a different shade of desperate, pawed and clutched my bare arm. At such operands I filled with silence and with tears. I had no powers sufficient to such need, nor do I now, only that I gave and would give what solidity I had to be held. I had myself just 17 prime years, and was incapable of knowing, still full of undivided life and exponential confidence that I could ever, would certainly, one day be this child. For James, wherever you are and however many years remain of those you have not subtracted from the certain multiplication of pains, I would like to tell you that if we could somehow return to the center, I am sure that we would find upon the small table a smooth, unblemished worksheet waiting blankly for our hands. I guess the story I want to tell after this was that the most embarrassing part of the poem for me was that I remembered that story really clearly, but when I was going to write it, I had forgotten James's name. And I think the thing that wounds me about this now is that I was able to go back and I could read. I kept a journal of my life at the time, and I could read and look up his name and the name of his brother, which was Andrew. But I realize now, reading the poem or thinking the story, that if I were to see them now, I would not recognize them. It would be impossible to recognize them. And I think about this sometimes because you imagine that with these people that you've met that have been really vulnerable or maybe wounded, and you could be passing them on the street any time. And I think of this when I see strangers or see people's faces that I don't know. I don't know what they would look like, or where they're living or how. And it does make me, I think, sometimes hungry to receive the face of strangers and to not know who they are. And I guess what I wanted to say is, if there is a child, or if there's not a child, and if the child is a boy, or if he's not a boy, and if he sits upon your knee or does not sit upon your knee, and if he touches your arm or does not touch your arm, and if he turns and looks up in your face, or if he does not turn and does not look up in your face, please receive the touch and the eyes, and don't forget their name. I think maybe I'll read 2 more poems. Is that okay? We'll do another film history. We'll wait. This is one I wanted to read. Another kind of based on true stories about children. It's called Children That I Fear. How can I describe the probable loneliness of all the childhood friends I was secretly afraid of? Those who kept guns religiously under their beds and dreamed of shooting something like a human head just to see what would happen. Because I had a human head, these children terrified me. And others, those who trapped squirrels, impaled them on rake prongs and flung them splendidly into the air, abandoning them in suburban cul-de-sacs to further mutilation and inglorious decay. There were those always happy to brawl about things they knew nothing about. How long an NHL match actually lasted, whether or not they'd actually seen their sister naked, and whether or not they liked it. Friends with parents who lay absent-eyed on brown velveteen couches while flies buzzed all day around curdling milk cartons, kitchen tables spattered with matter of uncertain origin. Friends with filthy mustaches, patches of swarthy hair clinging to profane lips, only just 12 but needing more than shaving lessons. Friends who speak in strange, shrill, throaty voices and who try to punch you in the balls when you're not looking. Those who had no respect for punctuation, who wouldn't pause or take any rest breaks while they were reading aloud. Of all these, who could compare with Wild Strider, a boy so Mississippi that he scared even God? During sleepovers, he'd put Nightmare on Elm Street on his bedroom TV as you climbed into bed, then take all his clothes off, but his white Fruit of the Looms, and expected you to do the same. My secret? I'd slide the top mattress about a foot away from the wall, nestle quick into this little gap, like the way you'd bury someone in Lode Runner, and sleep on the box springs, hoping nothing would happen. But of all the children I've known in terror or in fright, I feared most of all myself. For who can vouch for what the body does when the mind stops driving, falls asleep at the wheel? There's a true story about this Wild Strider. His name, I don't know if I should tell, but his name was Strider McCrory. And there was a song in the neighborhood, and we would, it's being filmed. Hello, Strider, I haven't seen you for years. But this is what the story's about. We had this song, and it was, and the chorus, all I remember is the chorus, and it was, stripper, 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 McCrory, Crory, stripper, 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 McCrory. And we would all sing it because everyone knew that he would take his clothes off, and it was creepy, sleeping in the same bed with him. And all of our parents were convinced that he would wind up in prison. And ever since Al Gore invented the internet, I would go every year, and I would check to see if I could find out what happened to Strider McCrory. And, you know, like checking correctional facilities websites, police blotters, things like that. And last year, I'm happy to report, I found evidence that Strider McCrory is still alive. You'll never guess what he's doing. This is amazing. He lives in rural Mississippi, where he teaches gun safety to children for the local 4-H club. I'm not lying. It's amazing. He turned his life around. This is the last poem I want to read. I need your help for this. And this is a poem about loneliness, and it's fitting because I think it's the basic human condition. We don't want it to be, and so we do lots of things against it. Fear of death and loneliness, probably that's my philosophy, which is very bleak. But what I want is people come to poetry readings, and we don't often participate, but I would like you to participate. And what I want you to do is to become a community of people here at this reading, and you'll become a community by shouting the word lonely. However you want to shout it, as loud or as long as you want, every time I raise my hand. So what I'd like to do is practice. When I raise my hand, I want you to shout the word lonely, along with everyone else in the room. So I'm going to try it.
Lonely.
I liked it.
Lonely.
Okay, and that's how this poem's going to go.
Lonely.
Like a forest of human arms.
Lonely.
Like sidewalks spit at a gray city at midnight.
Lonely.
Like your parents' red letter Bible.
Lonely.
Like a 3-car garage.
Lonely.
Like it's a motherfucking disease.
Lonely.
Like the disastrous echoing of your slow beating heart in winter and darkness and the impossible silence of your own very own bedroom. In the middle of everything, your own scarred heart beating almost like sleeping.
Lonely.
Like hatred or whiskey or anger.
Lonely.
Like a bus stop.
Lonely.
Like a woman in Grimesthorpe full of white lightning on a respirator, smoking, the minds closed, her mulatto shirtless children smiling green-eyed across the room and apologizing for their profanities.
Lonely.
Like a fat, blind eye.
Lonely.
Like a butcher, like meat, like a knife.
Lonely.
Like diaries kept by children.
Lonely.
Like something you've done and hope can be made smooth by hot water.
Lonely.
Again.
Lonely.
Thank you. Like John Mage's blood-ass bulldog in heat and wanting the thrill of dog.
Lonely.
Like the marrow in your bones.
Lonely.
Like carving Roanoke on your own oak heart.
Lonely.
Like a dozen seeds dropped in concrete carelessly.
Lonely.
Like the Danish girl who knocked crying on your door, breath smelling like fish, with small, cold fingers, asking why hadn't you spoken to her after church on Sunday? You had been so friendly Friday. Why?
Lonely.
Like Mim's ribcage, singing for feathers, wanting to vanish, to marry, to ripen.
Lonely.
Like the statues outside the art museum, rising from grave clothes and nobody watching.
Lonely.
Like a miracle.
Lonely.
Like Jasmine Sanchez touching your arm at the end of spring, just before driving home.
Lonely.
Like reading Mucent Message down under in a moldy library basement and putting a stone in your mouth. Like salivation, water, passion, cold stars.
Lonely. Lonely.
Thank you. Like old bread getting tossed to the ducks.
Lonely.
Like 11 p.m. tonight.
Lonely.
Like sage fire, burnt juniper, thistle blossom.
Lonely.
Like Civil War reenactors.
Lonely.
Like lying on top of the sheets, like listening to the click drop and the needle scratch, and then the voice of Joni Mitchell. Oh God, Joni Mitchell.
Lonely.
Like blue, like a case of you, like California, like every single track, like the record stopping.
Lonely.
Like all those stone heads left behind on Easter Island.
Lonely.
Like scissors, like tin roof, like raindrops, like branch apples.
Lonely.
Like $200 in singles and fives in your right hip pocket.
Lonely.
Like bodies doing for money.
Lonely.
Like smart price peas. Like salted new potatoes. Like clean socks. Like miraculous bread.
Lonely.
Like Brent Doan. Like the hedgehog crawling with fleas that was thrown in his bed amidst wild laughter while he was praying on his birthday.
Lonely.
Like mother's brain bleeding.
Lonely.
Like headlights of massive disasters.
Lonely.
Like toxins raining from sleeping cars.
Lonely.
Like taking that train, you know the one I'm talking about.
Lonely.
Like Moon River.
Lonely.
Like old Willie Nelson living in his infested flat, smoking hand rolls and waiting for the next stroke. Kids smelling smack right there and walking in and out his place at real-wood floors. An old smoke-stained Bible, nicotine heavy. You've got to respect Jesus, he said, and promptly disappeared.
Lonely.
Like angina.
Lonely.
Like driving to Franny Swakowski's house in the middle of the night, finding all the lights off. She's at college and loves someone else or no one.
Lonely.
Like a dull tooth.
Lonely.
Like the steam pouring off beans on toast.
Lonely.
Like Consermu Gamacho Warrior's nightmares at 2 a.m. Like cold sweats, like the dream of a head giving in to a handheld rock speeding. Like a suitcase full of spices that look like dried sticks, like being a black African in white England. like swinging a shoe against a laughing body rolling in sheets shouting, I will beat you, like the voice etched onto electric tape and mailed back home, like that voice, and the tears, like being black in England's green and peaceful land, like falling asleep and being scared, like being black and young in old England, like being tired.
Lonely.
Like cataracts.
Lonely.
Like the cold crunch, like fingers on doorknobs.
Lonely.
Like,
Lonely.
like,
Lonely.
thank you so much.
Enormous thank you tonight to Steele Wagstaff, to beautiful Ann Sexton, to Margaret Benbow, and to Marnie Brooker. Thank you so much to each of you. And thank you everybody for coming out. If this envelope, I don't know how far away around it made it. If you didn't get to it and you would like to put something in, it's right here propped up. And thank you so much to Avol for hosting this reading. Take a look around. There's fabulous books in here.